All right. Hello, hello, and good afternoon. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Relationship Series, Season 5, Episode 2. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. We will go slow at the beginning to give those of us who need a moment to straggle in. I hope you guys have a snack or a drink or a cup of tea or something. I'm drinking chai today, and it's so good. It feels very much like fall for me. So, again, thank you guys so much for joining us. We are going to have a great conversation today. I'm actually really excited about this one. For those of you who are new, who have not been with us before, we have transformational conversations that help us to revolutionize our relationships here. And we do the work, we heal for real, and we sow what we want to grow. That means we invest in the improvement and the quality of our relationships. I am Genevieve. I am your host. I am a teacher. I am a speaker. I am a coach, as well as a registered psychotherapist. And I am passionate about all things relationships. And I just enjoy this. I enjoy what we do here. And my mandate is to share with people how to pursue connection, quality connection over currency. As a main source of value, fulfillment, and joy in our lives. And so rather than pursuing things, pursuing material things and accomplishments, pursuing quality connection, quality relationships, and depth of attachment as a source of purpose as well as fulfillment. Let me see some folks coming in here, so I'll just admit them. All right. So again, welcome, welcome. This is our book review season. So books are an excellent source of mentorship, of information with low risk, high returns. I am a certified coach with Maxwell Leadership. So I am reviewing some of my favorite John Maxwell books. Today, we are looking at the 16 Undeniable Laws of Communication, which is one of my favorite books. It is great for individuals who want to begin speaking, who want to tailor their messaging, for clarification and so on, but it is also fantastic for learning how to communicate for the purpose of deepening our connections and our relationships. So today we're going to dive into communication and effective communication. Our agenda, very similar to what you guys are used to. We're looking at some SAQs, which are some self-awareness questions. We want to deepen our learning and understanding by asking ourselves questions about where we're at in our lives and in our journey, because we're all at different places. Some of us are more intentional, some of us are less intentional, some of us know more, don't know so much, and so on. So we want to meet us where we're at by asking ourselves some of these self-awareness questions, just to get our minds thinking, get ourselves reflecting and being somewhat introspective. And then we want to look at some quotes, which I think quotes are really great for just giving us sort of like a punch in the face, so to speak, with a truth, with a profound, sound truth. And quotes are kind of like our memes of the day, right? So just a saying that allows for us to sort of sit back and say, Sila, let me think about that for a moment, or something that sort of jogs our memory or brightens our day or gives us sort of a snap. So I love quotes. So we do some review of some quotes. We'll look at the laws. We're not going to look at all the laws because there are 16 of them. But we will look at half of the laws. And then maybe I'll just throw this in. For those of us who were present last week, we looked at the 15 laws of growth, and we didn't finish. We had a cutoff. But if you go on YouTube, Corner Counselor on YouTube, you will find the full entire presentation on the part that we cut off at the end. So I just went back in and recorded it and spliced it in. So you guys can see the full recording on YouTube, Corner Counselor, for the 15 Laws of Growth. And hopefully we'll get through everything today. I'm sure we will. So we'll look at 8 of the laws today for the 16 Laws of Communication. And then we'll have some question and answer, AKA sharing, at the end, but not really. So I always say this, I'm interruptible. I love interaction, engagement. That's part of our self-awareness question exercise, where we get a chance to share with one another, because that's really how we learn and grow and develop broadened perspectives. So you tell me about what's going on with you. I adopt that into my life, try to integrate that into what I've been doing, maybe some of my approaches, and then I can tweak and I can update some of the things that I might have been doing in my life that maybe we're not functioning as well as they could have been. And you're showing me that it's functioning in your life can help me, right? And so that's how we do this sort of interactive transformational conversation thing. We get to share, we get to answer questions, we get to ask questions, and then we get to learn and grow. So I'm interruptible. Please turn on your mics at any point in time and just say what you got to say. You can say whatever you want to say. And you can also, throw your comments in the chat. I know a lot of us are at work. And so you throw your comments in the chat. I will get to them. I will read them out loud, and then we can have a laugh or some more conversation about them. Last week, so just by way of announcement, last week we talked about a YouTube influencer, and I was trying to remember her name. Her name is Hannah Alonso. She's on YouTube. I'm not endorsing, just sharing what she does. She reviews influencer accounts, and she talks about what she gleans from them. And we were sort of looking at that in light of what might be real versus what might be fake. So we're looking at the comparison gap that a lot of us fall into when it comes to our own personal growth, and how we compare ourselves to others. And when we compare ourselves to others, we don't actually get a chance to see our own value and to develop. It kind of gets us stuck, right? So that's the comparison gap. So we were looking at that, and we were talking about Miss Hannah Alonso. So that's her name, that's her YouTube account. And again, I recorded the end, so you guys can go take a look at that, and we'll talk about masterminds starting soon. That will be geared towards deepening our learning and understanding as it pertains to the laws of growth and the laws of communication. So let's start our self-awareness questions for a moment, really wanting for you to think about this question. Have you ever thought about what it takes to communicate effectively, right? From the moment we are born, we are designed to communicate, right? And I say this very often. We are created for relationships. So if we're created for relationships, then communication, our capacity to relay messages and to receive messages between each other, is the tool that we use to do what we are created to do. Communication is the thing that we do in order for us to do the thing that we were born to do. Okay, for us to establish relationships, deepen relationships and connections and so on with one another. So have you ever thought about what it takes to actually do this effectively, to do this well? And I'll be very honest, I didn't really think about this too deeply. I actually took this very much for granted for most of my life, that there were best practices for how to convey our messaging, for how to convey what we felt inside, what we wanted to say inside to others, to the world. And so I didn't really think too much about this until most recently, where I started thinking about speaking and sharing messaging, sharing the message that I have, and people started asking me to come and speak. And I took up this book as really a handbook for those who wanted to become, better at speaking. But then I was reading and I thought, man, we can glean so many great tips from this, and we can use them in our everyday lives, and especially in our relationships, right? So think about, and maybe share, if you'd like, what you've learned about effective communication, what has worked for you, what has not worked for you, maybe what has worked that you keep doing, or what has not worked that you keep doing. And then what have you noticed does not work for you in terms of what you receive from others? And I was thinking about this question for myself, and I was thinking about, in the past, how I have made attempts to communicate my hurt or my upset, my disapproval, So facial expressions are really good for me. If you've ever watched any of these recordings, you probably noticed my face is very expressive. And I've done theater in the past, and we learned to be somewhat big with our movements and our gestures in order to convey on a stage the intent of our message, right? And so sometimes my facial expressions are very, very big. They're animated. But that is a way that we use to convey both our appreciation as well as sometimes our disapproval of something or a disappointment in something. And for a long time, I felt like that was enough. I felt like my facial expression, sometimes my body language, sometimes my attitude and my behavioral choices were enough to convey clearly what I wanted to say to this other person. And so I would give silent treatment to convey that I was upset or I was mad, upset, whatever the case is. But I wouldn't like for other people to give me silent treatment. Right. And so I thought, my goodness, what would I appreciate for others to do? What did I appreciate other people doing for me? I appreciated them speaking to me, being direct, being honest, being somewhat vulnerable and kind, being somewhat gentle. But I wasn't like that. Sometimes I was very harsh, very biting, very cutting with my words and with my approach. Um, and then I would just expect others to get what I was trying to say and then to respond accordingly. Right. So if I show up with hostility and anger, but yet I want you to be empathetic and vulnerable, it's kind of a disconnect, right? And so I'm wondering if for you guys, you've thought about how effective your communication is for actually getting your message across in the way that you want to, and encouraging the response that you're looking for, right? And so if I withhold my affection, and this is me just thinking through it, if I withhold my affection, or I give silent treatment, or I turn my back and I huff and puff, or I cross my arms and so on, and what I really want is for someone to hear me out, to listen to me, to give me a hug, to give me affection or what have you. But I'm not clear or direct about that. In fact, I'm actually demonstrating something that's very opposite to what I'm looking for. And someone who's very intuitive will be forthcoming with probably the action I'm looking for. And so we see this a lot with parents and children, right? And so a child gets upset and they do the huff and puff and they cross their arms and, they're pouting. And they're showing this really like aversive attitude, like don't come near me, stay away, and so on. And a loving, intuitive parent is going to go over to that child and be like, honey, what's going on? Talk to me. And perhaps give the child a hug, perhaps demonstrate some affection. But as adults, it doesn't always translate the same way, right? Because we have words. And it's assumed that as we grow up, that we can use our words effectively. And that's assumed. That's a huge assumption, right? And I don't think it always comes across as in the way that we would really like. So I just want you guys to think about, your own communication, and how it has either landed, how other people have communicated with you that has been in your mind helpful or good, right? So here we are, we're talking about leveling up our communication. So have other people been able to demonstrate and model for you a heightened sense of communication, elevated, effective communication in your mind? I do some work with couples, and this is maybe indicative of all of us, not just couples. But I've heard this phrase a lot. The phrase it's so common, so common, and I used to say it myself, so it's not foreign to me. But in a lot of ways, it's very um, productive and untrue, right? So the phrase, you guys will probably resonate with this, is they should just know. So he should just know, she should just know, they should just know how I'm feeling without me having to say it. By my attitude, by me slamming the cupboard doors and making lots of noise with the dishes, or by me being silent or not responding to their texts right away, or by me doing whatever I'm doing, they should just know how I'm feeling. And sometimes it sounds strange because I mean, they can get a gist. They can get the gist of it. But do they really know exactly how we're feeling? We're going to do an exercise in a second. And I want you guys to lean into this. But should they really know? Can they really know unless we are open and vulnerable and clear and direct about how we're feeling? Like the totality of what we're feeling, right? And I call this the mama principle because, sometimes people will make reference to their parents and they'll say, or their mothers, and they'll say, mom could just give me the look. Mom could just give me the look and I would just know what she was thinking. She would be telling me to stop doing what I'm doing, right? And mom used to be able to do that. So I thought maybe that translates into our everyday. And we think, we can just do that. We can just give a look. We can just behave in a certain way. We can just do an action or an activity and they will just know, right? But we want to level up our communication so that guesses are not our fallback. Guessing is not our retirement plan, so to speak, right? So we can really understand what it is that we are trying to say, what others are trying to say to us, and we can have clarity in our communication or effectiveness, higher, more, greater effectiveness in our communication. The chat is quiet, so you guys lean in. If you guys want to throw your mics on, you could definitely do that. Okay, another self-awareness question for you to just sit and think about. And this is especially, of course, in relationships with others. What is your biggest challenge with expressing yourself, right? Think about that. What do you find challenging about expressing yourself? About expressing yourself well, expressing yourself directly, expressing yourself honestly? What do you find?
Hello.
Hey, who's that? Sim? Hey, Sim.
Hi. Hey, Jen Jen. Hi. So, oh my goodness, I am at this point in life where I am a full-grown adult and, I don't fear being 100% genuine with people, but I often have a hard time saying hard things the right way in a way that it'll be well received by someone. Because I can sometimes just come off as harsh. In my mind, I feel like I come off as too harsh. So sometimes I hold back from telling people something that they need to hear that may be a hard truth, because I may not know how to deliver it in a way that they will receive it in the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you have an example of that, but saying something hard sounds like um, saying something that might hurt the other person. Like that. I mean, if it's a hard truth, it might, and they're going to have trouble receiving it, then it's about them, and it might be hurtful on some level. Is that fair to say it? I see a hand raised.
Yes. Sorry,
Yeah.
I also wanted to add, okay, so a quick example was there was a girl that I was in a friendship with, and I was like instrumental in helping her come back to church. So I'll use this as an example because I cared about her relationship with the Lord, and I didn't want her to be discouraged from church and hanging around church people, because I was like a representative of church people in her life. And I had to like put her in check about certain ways she was conducting herself. And I honestly didn't even know how to tell her. But then when we ended up having to have the conversation, it did come off a little bit harsh, and like she didn't receive it in a way where she sounded like she was sound and mature and how she received it. She was just like, okay, do you want to cut off the friendship? And I was just like trying to tell her, I just want to take a pause from things and really examine, our place in each other's lives. But she just took it harsh. She just like said, okay, I guess our friendship is done. And then she moved on, and things haven't been the same between us, but we still say hi and bye when we pass each other. But I don't know. It's just things just went left.
Yeah. So that's interesting because the role that you were playing had to do with her relationship with the Lord. So, okay, so maybe we step back because this is with regards to relationships. And I mean, sometimes when we're in relationships with others, we are not sure about what our role is. I think friendship is an interesting thing. I mean, when we're friends, if I'm your friend, I'm not your therapist. If I'm your friend, I'm not your coach. If I'm your friend, I'm not your mother. If I'm your, you know what I mean? So I kind of show up in a different way than if I were playing any of these other roles as a consultant or a mentor or what have you. And so as a friend, I'm not going to really tell you what to do. I'm not going to tell you, like, I'm going to be your friend. I'm going to support you and all that stuff that friends do. That's my role. but when we find ourselves in sort of different roles that require for us to be accountable, to take responsibility, and also to provide that sometimes harsh feedback, it can be difficult, and it can affect the relationship itself, the relationship bond. But also it sometimes blurs lines. Like, are we friends? Is this like a sort of a mentor mentee type of like, what is my role in this relationships? And that has to be established with words, right? And so those expectations have to be explicit, right? So what's my role in your life? If my role in your life is a therapist, then I'm here to challenge you and to call you out and to say, hey, maybe you need to take a look at some of these ways of being and thinking and whatever. But that also has to be established clearly, right? So when you say, okay, well, I'm not sure about some of these ways that you're showing up, and then it's not well received, it sounds like there might be a difference in terms of what you both expected from the relationships and your relationship roles, right? And so maybe you can sort of speak to that as well. And I saw Samuel with his hand up if you want to jump in as well. But Simone, I don't know if you want to speak.
Yeah. So in the case, I was trying to like explain that I didn't like how she was conducting herself when it came to, oh gosh, when it came to how we
I was
related
going to
to
say, you
one
don't have to be
another.
specific if you don't want to.
Yeah. Yeah, just like in terms of how we related to one another. I saw some patterns, and I noticed that there were some things that, like, some inconsistencies that started to show up in a friendship, and it made me
Mhm.
question her genuinity.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much what I had to bring up. And it's off. Like, I still feel like our story is not done, me and this person. I feel like we still have to have a conversation, but the
Yeah.
time and the place is weird. And she still has a church life, which is good and everything, because I was
Mhm.
concerned about her being discouraged and falling away from the church. So, and
Yeah.
I just put it in God's hand at this point.
Absolutely. And I love that. I love that you specified that it really had to do with the way that you both were interacting. So the relationship that you had with each other, right? And so being able to say, you know what? I don't like that. I don't like the way that you're showing up with me. I don't like the way that you're treating me. I don't like what you're saying or what you're doing to me. And so let's create some boundaries about how we're going to engage with one another so that I feel good and safe and that you also feel good and safe. We both feel valued and we both feel like we have a quality and safe, connection and relationship where we both can receive and we both can grow. And I think that's beautiful. I think that's beautiful. It's not always going to be well received. That's the truth. But at the end of the day, once you share your heart, right? Because if you're calling something out, it's probably because it hurts on some level, right? And when people aren't genuine with us, then we fear being vulnerable in the relationship. And that's not a comfortable place to be, right? And we can't predict, on some level how you're going to be, how you're going to show up, how you're going to treat it. Like that kind of doesn't feel good on the inside for us. So when you're able to say, you know what, hey, this is what I've noticed, and it's really kind of making me feel away on the inside. I'm wondering if we can revisit how we're engaging and interacting with each other so that we can both feel encouraged and edified and whatever else we want to feel within our relationship. So I love that. Thank you so much for sharing, Simone. Uh, Sam had a question and I see a comment in the chat.
I yeah, I was gonna answer the question listed with I have two answers as far as the biggest challenge with expressing myself. Um, Answer number one would be a sense of a shame or fear around whatever it is that I want to say. So the temptation would be either to lie or to say nothing about it
Mm-hmm.
because I'm afraid of or concerned about how the listener will react.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that's definitely particular to me, but common for humanity and particularly common for men. Just a sense of shame or fear around their true feelings or what's actually happening in their life. And obviously the history of men not being able to be vulnerable and many things that men might encounter not being socially acceptable to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so I heard a couple of things in there: shame, fear, shame and fear. So shame about what you are saying and fear about how it's going to be heard or received. I think that's, yeah, absolutely dead on, for most of us. I like the sort of bringing it back to learned behaviors, because socially speaking, we do receive many messages on a daily basis about how we are supposed to be, whether it's how we're supposed to be as females, males, Black people, white people, how we're supposed to be as older people or younger people, how we're supposed to be, whatever, people. We get messaging from our social contacts, we get messaging from the media, and that really does inform sometimes, and even from our places where we build faith relationships, whether it's in church or, whatever faith background we are a part of. All of that informs what we are ashamed about, what we feel guilty for, what we might be fearing, what we might fear, because then it translates back to how we sort of understand our identity, right? It's like, okay, am I living up to, these particular standards? Am I in the right place? Am I doing what's right? Am I okay? Is there something wrong with me? Am I normal, so to speak? Right? Am I enough? All those kind of questions sort of play in the background of our minds when we go to speak, when we go to say something, when we go to share what we want to share. So yeah, definitely. Expressing ourselves is hard. It's just it's challenging. I think one of the challenges that I have is what I'm doing now. It's actually speaking direct, honest words rather than in like colorful descriptions, being sort of succinct. I see another comment. Tone has been tricky. It can be perceived differently. Yeah, and that's for sure. For sure. Absolutely. And then what is normal communication? That's a good question. What is normal communication? I'm not sure. What's the answer to that? Anybody have an answer for that? Hey, Nigel. Hey, Nats. How y'all doing? um, Yeah, okay, so tone can be tricky, it can be perceived differently for sure. Absolutely. I have a very harsh tone at times. I think maybe, I don't know if it's a harsh tone, but like a blunt tone, and my tone can be very firm. So it might sound like I'm really sure about what I'm saying, and it might sound like I think I'm right. But if you know me, you can challenge me. Um, and then what is normal communication? Nigel, you want to jump on? I don't know if you can jump on for a second, but I don't know what normal communication is. Um, but I'd love to unpack that.
Hi everyone. Hi everyone. Just sharing. Glad to be here. Good topic. I wasn't actually looking for the right answer. I just wanted to have the discussion because is there such a thing as normal communication? I think we create these norms, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we say that these norms are how we should talk. Who makes that definition? Who creates that
Mm-hmm.
definition, right? And so we
Yeah.
box people in rather than allowing them to be individuals, right? As opposed to and learning how to create so that I think the purpose of communication is to understand, right? So how are you developing your communication so that people can understand you and you can listen and understand other people? I don't think there's a particular norm to communication because I mean, think about this summer. We are in a place where there's 72 languages. What's normal
Yeah.
communication for them? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Yeah. So just sharing it. I just want to hear the thoughts of other people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I like that in terms of like the prescriptive element. And anybody else can jump in as well. But I think the prescriptive element, I think we can, take a look at the prescriptive element. Like, do we need to say these particular words? I would probably veer on the side of like, no, we don't need to say these specific words. I think there are best practices in our communication in order for us to both relay our message most effectively, as well as for us to get the response that we are looking for. So we are more likely to get the response that we are looking for when we approach in a particular way or in these particular ways, and we'll talk again about the laws of communication in a moment. I'll just go through 8 of them briefly, but I think there are best practices, but I don't think there's a prescription per se. Jojo, hey Jojo, how you doing? Normal communicate. Sorry, Joanne's giving us a question or an answer. Normal communication is relative to the person and how they learn to communicate. Ooh, yeah. Okay. So we're going back the other way. So normal communication for individuals is what they've learned. And so normal communication isn't necessarily effective communication, right? So what's going to get you the best results may not necessarily be aligned with what you've learned in terms of how to express yourself. Because, and we find this often, there's friends and families and spouses. You come from a family where it was huge and everybody used to yell and scream and, that's how they got their point across. And then you come from a family and, everybody's really quiet. Nobody ruffles any feathers. Everything is swept under the rug. We never really deal with anything, address anything, or face anything. We just kind of pretend everything is fine and keep it moving. And then you get together and you're like, how come you don't talk about stuff? How come you don't yell? And you're like, how come you're always confronting things? How come, right? So there's always sort of a aha moment when we encounter other people whose norm has been very, very different from ours, right? So normal communication versus effective communication, great maybe follow-up, sort of question and discussion here. Okay. So here, I'll give you guys a couple of things. This just has to do with definitions and perhaps getting to the point. This has to do with my challenge. My challenge has been developing language that is succinct and finding meaning. And so what I found has been super helpful in the last 5 to 7 years or so has been the question, and this is like my golden question, like, what does that mean for you? That's my question. Because I actually don't know sometimes. Like when people say things, I'm not actually sure exactly what they mean. I know what I mean. I know what it is in my head, but I'm not really sure what it is that they mean. And I have been wrong so many times that for me, the question stays in my back pocket. It stays like if I had a front pocket, it would stay in my front pocket. Like I have been wrong. So like, I'll be like, oh, what is that? Like somebody will say something and I'll be like, oh, in my mind, I'll be like, oh, they probably mean this. And then I'll be like, no, Jen, don't do that. Ask the question. And I'll ask the question and I'll be like, so what does that mean for you? And they will tell me something that's completely, completely different from what I thought in my mind. And I'm like, whoa, Jen, that's why you have to ask the question. That's why it's so important to ask the question because you don't know. You don't know. You have your own assumptions that's based on your experience and filtered through your own interpretation. That's not the same. It's not the same as the other person who's a completely different individual who's in front of you. So we're going to define some feelings here. I want you guys to tell me what you guys think is the feeling behind or the emotion behind. Oh, I see a chat. Hold on. Comment. I love the concept. I've been trying to find a less white way of asking that question ever since I heard it. Not white way. Ooh. Sorry. So that's an interesting, what's it called? Descriptor as well, right? What does white mean for you, right? Does it, and anyway, we can get into all of that, but we won't. So define the feeling. And maybe, I don't know if is that a less white way? I don't know for you, maybe we can operationalize that or throw out some suggestions in the chat, y'all, on how to find a less white way of asking that question. So define the feeling. I want the ground to open up and swallow me. What's the feeling? I know we can see, I know we get the descriptor, I know we get the metaphor, but what is the feeling? What's the emotion? What are the possibilities here that could be describing if someone were to say that to you? Tell me your guesses. If someone said to you, I want the ground to open up and swallow me, what would you run away with? What would you automatically think or conclude? You guys can throw your answers in the chat. What are you thinking? I want the ground to open up and swallow me. Embarrassment, Joanne says, yeah? What else? There's some co-signing concurring on the embarrassment? Any other, and I get that this might be difficult because we don't always have a lot of emotion words or feelings words, but just one feeling, one emotion. That's not a descriptor, that's not a metaphor. Is it challenging to do that? Is it challenging? Do we always come up with one thing? Okay. So we got one, and embarrassment is, it sounds like the consensus here. Is there any other emotion that this could be describing? Despair. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Hopelessness, sadness, powerlessness, humiliation, right? Feeling let down. Like there's so much that this could be describing. Thank you, Simone, for that, right? And we just don't know until we ask. And it's very difficult to come up with the emotion, the actual emotion that someone might be experiencing. I feel like I got hit by a truck. Anybody want to venture a guess at that one? I feel like I got hit by a truck. What could they be describing? How are they feeling? What's the emotion? My back hurts. Is that an emotion? That could be what they're describing, right? And so what would they be saying? That they're in pain? Natalie, yes, absolutely. They could be overwhelmed. Yeah. Right. So many guesses. What we go to, what we jump to, it's not always what's being said. I feel like I got hit by a truck. That also could be embarrassment. It could be fatigue. I'm tired. Could be shock. Thank you, Dr. M. Yeah, absolutely. Could be shock. Surprise. Disappointment, Simone. Yeah. I got the wind knocked out of me. That's another a colorful way of saying it. And so we are very much prone to using colorful words to describe things that we are feeling, not necessarily using these emotion or feeling words. And this is about communication. This is about communicating what's actually going on for us in a way that helps the other person understand more fully. He was like a deer in headlights, and then it is what it is. Let's not do he was like a deer in headlights. Let's do it is what it is, because I hear this phrase so often. It is unbelievable. And I am forever dumbfounded. What does that mean? It is what it is. What is it that you are trying to say to me? What could that mean? Frustrated. Yes, Dr. M. Absolutely. I'm just fed up. I'm frustrated. I'm over it. And over it is very, very similar. I'm stressed out. I'm in distress. Yes. Right. It is what it is. I'm over it. What's the other one? I'm at my wit's end. Seriously, I'm serious. Seriously, that's another way of saying it. Seriously. Right. Acceptance. Ooh, I like that. Absolutely. It is what it is. I've accepted whatever it is. Yeah. Hopelessness. Yes. Powerlessness. I don't have any more power here. No more control here. Yeah. Absolutely. And so you see, we've come up with a few. There are many more, but we don't know until we ask. And that's sort of the point here. We come up with things based on our own thoughts and our own experiences, but we don't actually know. And so just asking the question, what do you mean, can level up our communication, and then taking the time to listen. I mean, if you don't really care, then don't ask. But if you do want to level up your communication and deepen your connections, then ask the question, what is it that you do mean by that, so that you can get a clearer understanding. All right. So let's jump in. We'll do, who do you know that communicates well? This is just another question that you can review. I'm going to be mindful of the time so that we have 8 minutes or so to get through the laws. But who do you know that communicates well? So just think about this. There are levels to this. And does it depend on who you're communicating to, whatever context you're communicating in, if you're communicating information versus your personal feelings. Is there a difference between how confident you are in your ability to communicate, depending on what you are communicating? I know sometimes it's easier to communicate our opinions than it is to communicate our emotions or our feelings, right? Sometimes in interpersonal settings, it's more difficult to communicate because the stakes are higher, like with our loved ones and so on, than it is, say, in a professional environment, right? So maybe you know some people that communicate well, with their staff members, with their teams, but they don't necessarily communicate well with their children or their spouse, right? So, ooh, President Obama. You know what's so funny? What's so funny is that when I asked myself this question, President Obama came to mind first. That's very funny. Yes, he does convey and convey his messaging and communicate very well. And Joanne says, me, yeah. Thanks, Jojo. Appreciate that. Look at you. Look at you edifying me. Appreciate it. Was that what you were trying to do? You were trying to edify me. Thank you. But yes, I think on a grand scale, great minds do think alike. On a grand scale, for public figures, I think presidential candidates generally communicate well, but President Obama does stand out as a very effective communicator. And he also employs one of the laws of, I say, the most important law of communication, which is actually connection. So we'll talk about that in a second. So who do you know that communicates well? How do you learn from them, glean from them? And how do you sort of apply that to your own life in terms of how you need to level up, where you need to level up, right? So again, some people can teach very well, but they have difficulty expressing their emotions and intentions to, say, their loved ones, right? Some people have many acquaintances, many people around, and they can talk and laugh and so on a surface level, but they don't have any deep friendships or deep connections where they can be vulnerable, open, and maybe non-judgmental, or whatever the case is, where they feel safe and trusting, right? So there's a difference between these types of communication and what we can enjoy in our relationships based on that kind of communication. And so talking about leveling up, we want to go higher. I have so many self-awareness questions today. How often do you work on your communication, and what do you do? So last week we learned about growth, that growth does not just happen by accident. We have to be intentional about it. We need to have a growth plan for things to change in our relationships, in our businesses, in our churches, in our lives. So what are you working on? How do you identify areas that you can work on? And maybe in your mind start thinking about how we're going to level up our own communication. We're going to go through the laws, and you guys can think, where can I start? What law can I start with? Start deepening my awareness, my understanding and my intentionality around this particular law, so that I can level up my communication if you're not there yet, right? So again, I haven't been there. This has been a struggle for me, and it's an ongoing struggle, and we're continuing to learn. All right, we'll do a couple of quotes. Communication to a relationship is like oxygen to life. Without it, it dies. So without oxygen, we die. Without good communication, I would add a caveat. I put good communication or quality communication, or effective communication. But even still, maybe not. Maybe just communication, because we do need to interact on some level, even unhelpful communication sometimes, to the relationship. So relationships die without communication. Communication is the way to connection. And so that's how we connect with people. And then the key to quality relationship is quality communication. So how do you evaluate your communication skills? It's quality, not quality. It can be better, it's average, it's mediocre, it's excellent, that kind of thing. Assess yourself. Assess. And see if you are often misunderstood, or are you often confusing in the way that you relay messaging? Do people often ask you to repeat things because they don't understand what you're saying? Or like we said earlier, do you just find it difficult to say what you need, or say what you want, or say what you mean clearly and directly? And if you have trouble figuring it out, ask your friends and family, because they will be willing to give you feedback if you ask them, and ask in an open way. And of course, you know, you want to ask the individuals who you trust, and of course, who will give you that feedback based in love. That's why I say ask your friends and family. But yeah, assess yourself, you know, ask yourself some of these questions, acknowledge where you're at. It's okay to be where you're at. That's where you're at. And decide what kind of action you're going to take. And we're going to start today, right? And maybe a mindset or a belief that's holding you back when it comes to quality communication and relationships. It's like, okay, maybe I thought that being minimizing, dismissing, and, you know, very nonchalant was effective in my relationships and communication. But now I realize that it's actually not helping me move the needle forward in building the types of relationships that I want. And I'm talking about me personally, because I've been and I asked the question, this was years ago when I started my journey, and I asked my friends and family the question. I was like, hey, where do I need to grow? And they'd be like, you're judgmental, you're critical, you're dismissive, you know, you're minimizing, you invalidate feelings, you do all these things. And I was like, whoa, humbled. And I was like, you know, you come across as you don't care sometimes, and all these things. And I was like, whoa, all right, let's start the work, you know? And I could have taken it and been like, oh my gosh, this is way too much, and offended and whatnot. But I really wanted to grow, and I really wanted to improve in these specific areas. I think it's Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett has a quote. He says, if there's one single thing that can help you to improve your life and your business and all this stuff by 50%, is learning to communicate well. And I was like, whoa, okay, that means I have to do it with other people, human beings, and that means I have to level up in these areas, right? I need to start working on these particular areas. So we're going to start today. We're going to start doing some actions, and let's look quickly before we close at some of these laws. Again, we're going to do a quick overview, and then at the end, I'll let you know how we can go deeper. Law of credibility. Your most effective message is the one you live. So being authentic and real and honest and vulnerable is the first stage, is one of the first laws, one of the first stages to conveying an effective message. So effective communication comes from you, comes from your honesty, comes from your lived experiences. You're not making stuff up. You're not pretending. It's just your honest expression, right? And so credibility gets you that. People listen to people who they trust, and people trust people that are honest. People trust people that they know show up in a way that is consistent, that is reliable, that is transparent, that is authentic, that has alignment and integrity between like their words and their actions. And, you know, when you are able to engage in those kinds of conversations, then you build credibility. And this happens over time. And again, relationships are developed over time. And similarly, communication in relationships can be developed over time. So we can improve our communication in our relationships over time. And so law of credibility means, and this goes for speakers, but it also goes for us as humans in relationships, right? So it really just means that you are credible in what you're saying. So I can take you to the bank. I can take whatever you say to the bank. Hey, Jen, I'm going to show up at 5 o'clock. You know, I know you're pulling into the driveway at 4:59, right? And you demonstrate that over time in it, and it takes consistency to foster those deeper connections and bonds over time in our communication. So the law of credibility is one of the laws of communication. The law of observation is big. Good communicators learn from, sorry, good communicators learn from great communicators. And so this principle is about watching, listening, observing, absorbing, you know, techniques and styles and habits from other people, from those who excel in communication, in effectively conveying their messages. And so by studying what makes them great and what makes them effective, we can apply those kinds of insights to our own interactions and to our own relationships. And we can become skilled at connecting with others and building relationships with others. And so if I want to look at, and I watch President Obama's speeches and just the way that he connects with people, what he says and how he does that, that is powerful stuff, right? And so much of our success is going to depend on who we're learning from. right? If we want to learn in a particular area, we need to look at people who are great in that area. And so that's the law of observation. Take time to observe other people who are great at communication. That's why I asked, hey, who do you know that communicates well in the specific area that you want to communicate well in? Well, start looking at them, you know, and start developing some of the skills that they have. I remember reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and the writer differentiating between the messaging that he got from his rich dad and from his poor dad, and who he intentionally chose to emulate. Right. So he was looking at, hey, I want this kind of life. I want to have these kinds of feelings. I want to, you know, do this. And so I'm going to, even though I have my own dad, I'm going to emulate as I observe, you know, what he's doing, because I want more of that. So in the context of relationship, the law of observation can be like a game changer. I was watching what was it? It was, I don't know if you guys heard of The Forge. It's a new movie that's out. Priscilla Shire, or whatever her name is. But anyway, she was doing an interview.
Such a good movie, by the way. Amazing movie. The whole family needs to pack
Right?
up and go watch that together.
Okay,
Just
thank
had
you
to
for
say that.
endorsing. Yes. So well, this was not the movie, but this was her interviewing about the movie, about her process in the movie. But anyway, she was on with her husband, and she was describing what was powerful and effective within their marriage. And what was most powerful was they got marriage mentors when they got married. And so they had a couple that were an older married couple that they placed in charge of their marriage. And so anytime they had like issues, disagreements, or whatever, they would go to their marriage mentors, and they would, of course, observe what they said, what they did, and ask them advice and counsel and wisdom and so on and so forth. And they attribute so much of the success of their marriage over the last, I don't know, 20 plus years to having those mentors, right? Being able to model or have a model for a good marriage. So, you know, law of observation sort of in effect here, right? So we have to learn from those exemplary ways of communicating and those exemplary relationships. Law of conviction, I'm gonna go a little bit faster. The stronger you believe it, the more people feel it. And so I take this as, so this is, of course, when speaking. And so if you believe in something, people are going to get the gist of that. They're going to feel that. You guys know that I'm passionate about relationships and about quality relationships, especially. And that's because I share that. And I don't hold back on that. You know that I'm convinced about that today. In relationships, how I think this translates is you understanding what your convictions and beliefs are about your relationships for real. Do you actually value your relationships? I remember there was a time where I was like, oh yeah, relationships are a thing, but I didn't really care that much. I didn't really care that much. I cared more about how I felt, about protecting myself, about not getting hurt. I cared more about that than I cared about the relationships that I had, the connections that I had. And so that meant I showed up in different ways. I used to devalue people. I would you know, say certain kinds of words, speak to people in certain ways. You know, and it just showed out. I was willing to show up much differently with others when I didn't value relationships as much as I do now. And when I look at the difference, it's really about my understanding of what this relationship means to me in my life. So now I'm much more deeply committed to my values in relationship, right? So love and respect and honor and honesty and all those things. And I show up that way because I value my relationships differently. But when I didn't, when I wasn't convinced that we were created for relationships, then I didn't value my relationships that much, right? So convictions about our values, convictions about, you know, the importance of showing up a certain way or leveling up our communication, our convictions about our relationships and the quality of our relationship and the possibilities within our relationships, all of that, it gets borne out in our relationship. Samuel, I see a raised hand. Talk to me.
Yeah, so this ties back. This is all really good. This ties back to the second point that I wanted to say as far as challenges that I experience in communication. And I find one of the challenges that I experience is that I really want to communicate sometimes the way that I think is right. Like I really, really, really want to always did and still do. For example, I might be in a professional setting and I feel like everyone is being too gentle, and I want to be straightforward and blunt and harsher with my communication. Or I might be talking to friends and family, and I want to communicate the way that I want, and I think I'm entitled to it. Is the truth? Like, it's a sense of entitlement that I have to deal with, because the way that I want to communicate may not be the most effective, or it may be, but that's not what's most important to me. The most important is me feeling like I'm owed, or I'm entitled to sometimes speak the way that I want, which is not even necessarily false. It's not even in and of itself a lie, but just that very approach sometimes puts me in situations where the result of the communication is not what I want, right? Be it
Yeah.
professionally or personally or with partners. So I think
Yeah.
especially, I think this is something, especially as people of color, that we experienced after having our voices to some degree marginalized in different settings, right? We want to express ourselves the way that feels natural to us, and that reflects our culture and
Yeah.
our upbringing. But does that always make sense? No. But it also, like, it doesn't always mean that we're wrong to express ourselves in the way that's authentic to us. So that's a struggle that I experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, when people can see and feel that you truly believe in the beauty and like the health of the relationship or of the interactions, like you're buying into a certain culture and climate. When people see that and know that about you, I think they're more likely to connect with you and give you more room to express in the ways that you feel most comfortable in that moment. Like, people feel that. People know that even if you say something and this, again, borne out over time, even if you say something that might be a little bit off or maybe a little bit cutting, like, if they know that overall your desire is for deeper relationships, for quality, for all that stuff, then they are more likely to interpret it in that way, through that lens, through that filter, right? But that, again, comes with credibility, because you would have had to have shown that over time, through multiple interactions, in order for them to gain that truth, and then therefore now to filter some of the ways in which you show up, or the ways in which you speak, or what have you, through that lens, right? So yeah, I think again, it has to do with all of the laws working together. And I have a few more minutes, because I do want to let you guys on time, but I want to get to the most important, in my opinion, law of communication. So the law of preparation, very simply: get your reps in, start communicating. Start communicating, communicate more, communicate over and over. Our application to the relationships is that we think about what we want to say and how we want to say it, and we practice saying it that way. Whether it's a heartfelt conversation, or a difficult conversation, or difficult discussion, preparation helps us to communicate with clarity and with empathy. If we want to practice empathy, practice it. Get your reps in. So prepare for communication, okay? The law of collaboration says some of our best thinking will be done with others. I like this one. No one of us has all the answers. That's basically what this is saying. So we are created to live and to thrive in our community with one another. And so we have blind spots. We have things that we need to work on. Others see and help us to discover those blind spots. And it's the same in relationships. Okay, so collaborate with others when we want to communicate. Sometimes that means talking with your therapist about how you're going to address something in your family, or with your spouse, right? Okay. And I know this goes against a lot of our cultural norms or cultural ideas, like don't tell nobody your business and all that. Listen, you need to talk to people about your relationships. Okay, talk, please. Listen, don't do your solo thinking. Submit yourself to someone else, not everyone else, but someone else. Okay, so collaborate. The law of content. Okay, where is it? Okay, give me a couple more minutes, y'all. This one and then the next one is the most important. The law of content. When you have something worth saying, people start to listen. This is very true for speakers, but I think it's also true in relationships. People can feel your heart, and if you show up and you're inauthentic and all the time, like, nobody wants to listen to you. Nobody cares. No, no, like just miss me with all that stuff. If you're always trying to like, be right and be this. I mean, I just want to know that you get indigestion like everybody else. Like, are you human? It's like, that's all I need to know right now. I think there's a saying, it says people don't really know what you don't care what you have to say until they know that you care about them. I love that saying, right? Because that plays into the next law of communication, which I think is the most important law of communication. It is the law of connecting, right? And this is a big thing. Communicators know it's all about others. It's not about you. It's not about you and your desires, not about me and what I want and all this stuff. It's all about connecting with people. And we have to connect with people before we can effectively communicate with them. You can say a lot of things, but if you don't feel like I care about you, then most of the things that I say are gonna go in one ear and out the next. And this is very true of our relationships as well. I don't know if you've ever been a child and you've gotten in trouble or your parents have scolded you and you didn't want to hear nothing they had to say. All their lectures for all of their immense many words, you were just like, I don't care. I don't care. All I want is a hug. All I want to know is that you care about me. You care about my tears. You care about my hurt. You care about my pain. And you care enough to shut the heck up with your lectures and give me a hug. Right? And I think sometimes we have to get to the point where we are willing to focus on finding the common ground and showing genuine interest in other people before, sort of diving into our opinions and our thoughts and, our great ideas. Because connecting like lays the foundation for us to build like meaningful dialogue with others. It builds that foundation for us to connect, to communicate. So if we can shift the focus from like a self-centered communication, like I have great things to say, to like truly understanding and valuing what other people are going through, what other people are saying, where other people might be at, and really genuinely valuing other people. I think when we like prioritize their needs and so on, especially as speakers, but as speakers, but especially as individuals in relationships, then we can build those deeper like sense of trust and so on with them. Okay, I know that we are at time. I'm going to give you 2 more slides. We're not going to do the law of simplicity. But communicators take something complicated and make it simple. This is the KISS principle. KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Less is more. Just don't talk a lot. Just say specifically what you want to say. And that probably connects back to the law of preparation. Prepare before you've got things to say. Okay, success formula. Learn the laws of communication. Get the book. And then failure formula, ignore the laws. If you ignore the laws, you'll probably not level up your communication and communicate effectively. All right, intention versus action. What will you do? What is your first step? What law are you going to focus in on? And this is our book review series. So don't be a listener, just a listener, be a doer, and do something that relates to leveling up your communication. This is where we didn't get to last week. We are going to be masterminding the laws of growth and the laws of communication. So that means just going deeper. We'll be getting into the nitty-gritty, doing the exercises, and really seeing how it plays out and improves our growth and our communication, and seeing how that affects our relationships. So if you're serious about growth, if you're serious about change, if you're serious about communication in your lives and your work, and most important, your relationships, then sign up, send me an email, or send me your email, put your email in the chat, or send me an email, and then I'll give you more details on when we're going to be starting these masterminds and when we will read the books and flesh out the best bits. Okay, so I invite you guys all to join me in that. And next week, we are going to be talking about powerful connections. And so I showed you guys about the main law of communication, which is connecting. And we're going to talk about deepening our connections and how to get those powerful connections in our lives. So join us next week on the relationship series. It is such a pleasure to have you guys here with us. And thank you for engaging. Thank you for your comments in the chat. Thank you for your comments on the mic. Appreciate you. We are all learning and growing together. I will see you guys next week. Have an awesome week, you guys. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, May. Thank you for being present with us. Bye, Simone. Bye, Jojo. Thank you so much. Dr. M, bless you. Miss you too. Oh. All right, y'all. Have a good one. Bye, guys. Have a good week. Hey, Mesh. I'm going to message you after. Oh, am I still recording? Oh, I better stop. Okay.